Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this very special event this morning. This morning we have very, very special guest speaker, Ambassador of the United States of America, Mr. Mark Lippert. Actually, he is better known among Koreans as Sejun's dad. Sejun just celebrated his 100th day only a few days ago on April 25th. As you know, Korean parents usually celebrate their children's 100th day, first 100th day, traditionally. And this time again, Ambassador gave a party and many Koreans went there, but I wasn't able to join the party, and also most Koreans, but I know they all sent best wishes for Sejun. I'm sure you all are so glad to see him in good health. He has already recovered from the injury inflicted on him by a madman, and we were all shocked and concerned. But Ambassador handled the situation in a firm and reassuring and courageous way. You actually comforted Koreans and the people all over the world. We really appreciate for your the character and the way you handled the situation. Your personal mishap could have gone beyond personal level, but you handled so well that it turned out as everything is okay, and you're in good health now, and we're so glad to have you, particularly this morning. I'm sure most of you know what kind of career Ambassador Lippert had. He has had a distinguished public service career for his country, mostly in the field of national security and defense, military affairs, and congressional affairs, and diplomacy. And I don't think I should go through all long list of his resume, but his service includes serving as Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, and also he was Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asia and Pacific Security Affairs. But what impresses us most among his resume is his military services for his country. In fact, prior to being confirmed to be ambassador to Korea in April 2012, he completed a 2-year mobilization on active duty in the United States Navy. During that time, which included a deployment to Afghanistan, he served as an intelligence officer for the Naval Special Warfare Development Group in Virginia Beach. And for all his services, he was awarded and decorated and recognized by the U.S. government, which include the Bronze Star Medal for his service in Iraq and Defense Meritorious Service Medal and basic parachutist badge. I'm sure those backgrounds can help him very much in handling the very tragic situation. Well, we have the many distinguished participants this morning, so I cannot spend much time in recognizing everyone, but we have General Assemblyman Lee, and sitting next to him in the Chairman Yoon. He is one of the leading global business CEOs. He's a chairman of FILA, and Mr. Kwon, Minister Kwon, and Dr. Shin is former the Korea Bar Association, and Dr. An, Chairman An, and former, and Dr. He was former OECD ambassador. And we have Ambassador Basho from Japan, and Ambassador from Finland, and Ambassador from India, and Ambassador from New Zealand and Australia. Thank you very much for joining with us this morning. Well, with no further ado, I'd like to invite Ambassador Lippert. Please join me in welcoming him.
All right. 안녕하십니까, 여러분. Usually I'd say Mark Lippert입니다, but I guess after the chairman's comment, I have to say Seijuni Yappa입니다. Anyway, Chona Chim입니다, and thank you for, Mr. Chairman, thank you for having us here today. Thank you for allowing us this great opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to speak at the Institute's distinguished lecture forum. I would, like you, there are so many distinguished guests here. I would just echo what you said in your introductions. It's an unbelievably distinguished panel, and if we started introducing everybody, we would introduce the whole room. So it is a real treat and an honor to be here among these widely respected experts on economic and foreign policy, and so it is a true honor. Today I just was going to give some remarks on the U.S. economic relationship with the Republic of Korea and how our partnership, common values, mutual commitments have resulted in an increase of prosperity across the Asia-Pacific region and globally. Our economic partnership with South Korea has flourished over the last several decades. That's sort of the bottom line. This is a partnership that has really picked up steam, has accelerated, and it's accelerated at a rapid rate over the past several years especially. And it's reflective of the Republic of Korea's own development trajectory, a path of sustained economic growth, technological innovation, and transformative social change. South Korea's example shows what market liberalization, free and open trade, and democratic principles can do for its country's economic growth and for its people. Today's venue also gives me the opportunity to state once again that the purpose and resolve behind our relationship with Korea is unwavering, and it's unwavering across all facets of this relationship, from military to economic to cultural to our global diplomatic partnership. It is unwavering. And we will continue to grow this relationship, not only in terms of our critical military alliance, but also in terms of our vibrant economic ties, important diplomatic partnership, and the deep friendship between the Korean and American people. And I can say with certainty that the U.S.-ROK relationship is a top priority. It's a top priority in and of itself, and at the same time, this relationship with Korea parallels and reinforces the broader U.S. commitment to the Asia-Pacific region. As many of you know, a key element of our rebalance to Asia policy is shared economic prosperity across the Pacific. We recognize that a peaceful and prosperous Asia is essential to our own peace and prosperity. And all of this speaks to why President Obama has made 7 visits to the Asia-Pacific region, including 4 to South Korea, and why Secretary Kerry has traveled to the region 9 times in just 2 years. The Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Martin Dempsey visited South Korea in March. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter was here just a few weeks ago. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken made his very first trip to the Republic of Korea. And our Deputy Secretary of the Interior Department, Mike Connor, was here just a little bit earlier this month. Building on all of this high-level attention is the direction that Secretary Kerry has provided to the State Department and other government agencies on economic policy. In short, he has said, foreign policy is economic policy, and economic policy is foreign policy. To that end, U.S. efforts to support private investment, public investment, and trade and technological development all closely complement and connect with the work of nations on this side of the Pacific. To underscore this point, it is important to note that the U.S. economy is picking up steam again, and American business have set a new record for consecutive job growth in the United States. Exports have been a powerful factor in this job growth, supporting 1 in 4 jobs in the manufacturing sector. Of course, this level of export growth could not be possible without our free trade agreements and our strong relationships with Asia's markets. America's commercial and trade relationships with the East Asia Pacific region are integral to our economic growth. This investment is poised to grow in the coming decades with Asia's own expected growth rates. The region has over 500 million middle-class consumers, which is expected to increase to 2.7 billion by 2030. The United States, China, Japan are the world's 3 largest economies, and Korea has moved into the top 12. Outside of Europe and North America, these are the largest trading partners of the United States, and trade within the region and around the Asia Pacific has grown at an exponential rate. The growth of these economic relationships in Asia has had an influential impact across security and diplomatic relations alike. Over the past several decades, Korea has achieved a remarkably high level of economic growth. It is now the U.S.'s 6th largest good trading partner with a $1 trillion economy. This growth has benefited private sector companies on both sides of the Pacific. Major U.S. firms have long been leading investors in South Korea, while South Korea's top firms have in turn made significant investments into the United States. In Korea, IP-intensive U.S. firms play key roles in Korea's manufacturing ecosystem, which provides mutual benefits to Korea and the U.S. alike. For example, 3M Korea uses U.S. technology and inputs to manufacture films and chemicals in Korea that are crucial to Samsung, LG, and other Korean companies and consumers in the high-tech products industries. Many of the jets flying to and from Korea's airports are built with parts from U.S. aerospace manufacturers. And thanks to our FTA agreement with Korea, KORUS, these products are now duty-free. We all know that expanding trade has created a bright future for billions of people around the world. Between 1991 and 2011, as developing countries doubled their share of global trade, nearly 1 billion men, women, and children were lifted out of poverty. Trade has opened up new markets for the private sector, has laid the groundwork for open and free competition, and has leveled the playing field so that everyone can share in the benefits of sustained and inclusive economic growth. In Asia, the U.S. Korea Free Trade Agreement, known as KORUS, stands as the most significant and high-quality FTA in this region. It has become the bedrock of our economic partnership. We just celebrated the 3-year anniversary of KORUS in March, and the good news is there was a great deal to celebrate. Overall, U.S.-Korea trade, exports of U.S. goods, services, agricultural products, and bilateral investments all increased in 2014. Total trade with the Republic of Korea was up almost 10% in 2014, reaching a record $114 billion. U.S. goods exports to Korea were up almost 7% in 2014 to $44 billion. We continue to see benefits resulting from the reduction or elimination of prohibitive tariffs in select sectors. 2014 was also the best year ever for U.S. exports to Korea. U.S. automobile exports to Korea increased 24% in 2014. More U.S. beef and wines are available in Korea, sorry Australia and New Zealand, as are dairy products and citrus. Bilateral investment has now also increased significantly, and Korea is now the 7th fastest growing source of foreign direct investment in the United States. FDI from Korea in 2014 reached $31 billion. Of course, there is still more work to be done. The U.S. government is committed to engaging with Korea to achieve full implementation of both the letter and spirit of KORUS. And we have great partners to do this. With American businesses, Korean businesses, the government of Korea, we can all work together to resolve outstanding issues and ensure our peoples and companies reap the full benefits of this historic agreement. We, of course, strongly support President Park's commitment to fully and faithfully implement KORUS FTA and her recent initiative to seek deregulation, improve the business climate, and implement new regulations in a transparent and predictable manner. It's not possible to talk about the significance of trade in Asia Pacific without also mentioning the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. TPP is a high standards trade and investment agreement that is, as everyone knows, currently in the final stages of negotiation. Once complete, this agreement will encompass approximately 30% of world trade, 40% of global GDP, 50% of projected global economic growth, and 800 million consumers. TPP also holds great strategic importance. When the countries that hold 40% of global GDP declare with one voice that global rules for doing business in the 21st century must and will change for the better, the world listens. This agreement will reflect and address many of the emerging economic issues that we all face. And through TPP, we have been able to collectively address some of these issues, such as workers' rights, environmental protection, the protection of intellectual property, and the promotion of digital trade. TPP will also be the first FTA to specifically promote small and medium-sized enterprises, tackling head-on the trade and investment barriers that affect small businesses the most. Concluding this agreement will also support U.S. private sector companies in opening up new doors to the 2.7 billion middle-class consumers by 2030 that I mentioned earlier in the speech. It will also give these consumers better access to high-quality goods and services, from food to healthcare to entertainment. TPP, in many respects, is a KORUS Plus agreement. And the fact that Korea has committed to high standards agreement makes it a natural candidate for negotiation and TPP. We realize Korea plays an important role in the regional economy and has FTAs with many countries in the Pacific. The U.S. welcomes Korea's interest in TPP and looks forward to working with and consulting with the government of Korea on this issue. Let me turn to another interrelated subject, our global partnership with the Republic of Korea. For more than 60 years, working closely with the ROK military, this alliance has helped provide the security umbrella that has helped create an environment in which the U.S. ROK economic activity has thrived. To paraphrase Secretary of Defense Carter, security is a little like oxygen, often not seen and only noticed when gone. This alliance has grown in scope and complexity. It is now more than a military alliance, more than an economic partnership. It is a comprehensive strategic alliance. We partner with Korea globally in tackling some of the most pressing issues affecting the world. From reducing poverty to mitigating climate change and protecting the environment to combating epidemics, the United States and Korea are making the world a safer and prosperous place for future generations. The cooperation between the United States and Korea in overseas development assistance demonstrates just how far Korea has come and how it has evolved into a comprehensive partner of the United States on economic issues. 60 years ago, everybody knows Korea was a recipient of development assistance. But today, Korea is a shining example of a country that has transitioned from an aid recipient to an aid donor. And KOICA and the USAID have partnered to provide development assistance to places in Africa and Southeast Asia for vital needs such as healthcare and energy. Moreover, KOICA now has 4,500 international volunteers each year, second only to the U.S. Peace Corps. And development assistance lays the groundwork for economic growth to lift populations out of poverty Entrepreneurship and innovation are essential for sustaining economic growth and continuing the spread of economic prosperity. But as we promote economic growth, the United States and Korea are also tackling other pressing global challenges with economic dimensions. Climate change has a real economic impact on all countries, but most severely impacts are on some of the world's most vulnerable population. The United States and Korea collaborate closely in the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change and the Major Economies Forum on Energy and Climate to establish specific targets for carbon emission reductions. President Obama pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by 2025, and soon we are hopeful that Korea will renounce its reduction targets. Korea also stepped forward to host the Green Climate Fund, an international organization tasked with identifying and funding innovative ways to counter the effects of climate change. The United States strongly supports the Green Climate Fund and has pledged $3 billion to the organization. But it's clear that any effort to deal with climate change must balance reductions in greenhouse gas emissions with growing energy needs. Through our clean energy policy dialogue with the Republic of Korea, we are jointly developing innovative, clean energy technologies that will power the planet without sacrificing the environment. Managing existing energy resources is just important as new technologies, and as we move towards a low carbon future. We coordinate on these very issues through our energy security dialogue, a dialogue that has become rich, robust, and deep in the past several years. Like climate change, health risks and epidemics are threats that pay no regard to national borders, and the White House launched the Global Health and Security Agenda, an initiative in 2014 to accelerate progress towards the vision of a world safe and secure from naturally occurring, deliberate, or accidental infectious disease threat. And Korea agreed to host the second GHSA meeting this fall. Both Korea and the United States have dispatched healthcare professionals and resources to combat the Ebola outbreak, one of the toughest public health issues we've faced in recent memory. But in the modern world, it's not just enough to work together on these issues in the physical realm. The virtual world of the internet has just as real of an impact on our daily lives. And Korea is one of the most wired countries on the planet and the perfect host for last year's meeting on the ITU Plenipotentiary. At this International Forum on Telecom Issues, the United States and Korea reaffirmed our shared objective of an open, interoperable, secure, and reliable cyberspace, including continued support for the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. U.S. Korea cooperation on cyber issues is expanding to address many of these challenges. We work together on issues affecting our people across the planet. We work together in the virtual realm of cyberspace, but our cooperation stretches beyond even those areas to reach into outer space. And during President Obama's April 2014 visit to Seoul, he and President Park publicly expressed a desire to deepen our bilateral space cooperation. The United States and the ROK currently have a cooperative technical agreements in a broad range of space-related fields and are looking at opportunities for further cooperation between NASA, Korea Aerospace Institute, including designing projects to take place on the moon. The United States and Korea held our inaugural space dialogue in July 2014, and we are looking forward to aggressively pursuing this area of cooperation. Space, cyber, and other areas are often on the cutting edge of technology and innovation, and the U.S. and Korea have worked together to embrace innovation in our societies and encourage entrepreneurship. We recognize that governments must take steps to ensure a positive regulatory and legal environment which allows both new companies and new technologies to take root. Entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized enterprises are crucial to an inclusive and sustainable growth trajectory. Both Korea and American companies will benefit from continued collaboration on new innovation, science and technology, and shared best practices and networks for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Part and parcel of improving and enhancing innovation is working bilaterally and multilateral to promote a regional economic and trade architecture that is rules-based and provides open, free, transparent, and fair framework for everyone. In addition to encouraging innovation and investment, this will deepen the region's economic integration, reduce costs to consumers, stimulate job creation, as well as allow U.S. businesses to tap into opportunities in the region. And South Korea stands as a strong partner in making regional economic integration a reality and ensuring shared prosperity for all. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by re-emphasizing that for more than 60 years, the United States and Korea have stood side by side, working with each other on economic issues and issues of other issues of geostrategic and political importance to the region. I think just going through the speech today, one gets a sense of the comprehensive and robust nature of the economic relationship that covers everything from bilateral trade to multilateral engagement to pushing out into new areas, cyberspace, space, innovation, and so forth. U.S. and Korean private sector companies have mutually benefited from enhanced trade and investment ties. We have become increasingly close partners on global issues, and our people-to-people ties, driven in part by economic relations, have helped deepen shared appreciation of U.S. and Korean culture. Ours is a relationship of shared trust and shared values, the foundation that supports our economic engagements and agreement. It supports the free flow of goods, capital, and people across our borders. And it supports the future of shared economic prosperity across nations of the Pacific. This will, in turn, reinforce a peaceful, prosperous Asia for years to come. So I thank you for your time today. Thank you for giving me a chance to share our views on our economic relationship with Korea. Thank you for all of your friendship. Thank you for your support. And thank you for your service. 감사합니다.
Well, thank you very much for very comprehensive and insightful the overview of Korea-U.S. relationship or partnership, particularly in the economics area. I'm sure it is a very rare opportunity for us to have Ambassador Lippert, so I'm sure he will be willing to entertain a few questions and comments from the floor. Please, your comments or question as brief as possible and get to the point. Yes, Dr. An. He currently chairs the government's committee for the
corporate partnership.
Yes, partnership. Yes, 동반성장위원회. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your really very comprehensive coverage of bilateral relationship. Well, you said this Korea is really a natural candidate to join TPP because of our chorus and also Korea's intention to become a global FTA hub. Indeed, our trading FTA partners constitute roughly over 75% of the world GDP. Well, this tells us that Korea at this point can join TPP as a founding member rather than the second sort of the entering nation after the U.S. and other 11 nations, especially with Japan, they completed the first sort of the round of negotiation. Well, so if Korea joins TPP as founding member, I think the content and the quality of the TPP could certainly enhance. And as you know, well, Korea completed our FTA negotiation with China, and we can also eventually bring China into the whole picture. by let the China commit deeply in intellectual property right, all kinds of the trade rules globally, required. In this sense, maybe Korea can play sort of the intermediate role to bring China into a grand design of the Asia-Pacific free trade area as addressed in the APEC movement, in which the U.S. is, play integral part of promoting free trade area, Asia-Pacific community. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. No, very good. Look, I think as you point out, Korea is a natural candidate for membership in TPP, and I think probably the best data point there is that I think it has FTAs with every possible founding member of TPP except Mexico and Japan, right? So Korea is already a high standard, high performing trading partner that is, as you mentioned, globally active in the world and engaging with many, actually all of the partners with TPP, and almost all of them you have FTAs with. I think the question now is just the mechanics, right? In terms of right now, I mean, we have to get a deal, and we have to get it through the U.S. Congress, and other countries have to get their deals through their parliaments. So the mechanics are difficult at this point, but I think the spirit of interest and welcoming TPP's interest, or welcoming Korea's interest in TPP very much is still alive. So I think that's kind of the issue that we have to look at, are sort of the practical modalities versus the spirit, and try to figure out a way forward. Thanks.
Yeah. By the way, Dr. An said this, the TPP countries' GDP may account for about 75%. I think that is based on purchasing power parity, but based on market exchange rate, I think it's a 40%, yes. Oh, Korea, yes, I'm sorry, yes, the TPP countries, yes. Okay, all right, yes, Mr. Kwon, yes.
Thank you, Mark. Once again, congratulate Session's 100 days birthday party. It was a great occasion. For your information and for some of our audience's information, Korea made mutual defense agreement with United States October 1953, right after Korean War. The U.S. is the only country Korea had a mutual defense agreement, whilst you have 4 countries, including Korea, Philippines, Japan, UK. So our mutual defense agreement has been, and now still, cornerstone for maintaining peace and prevent any reckless attempt from North Korea. But our biggest dream and the thinking lying upon the unification, because North Korea seems cannot continue. But we need to have the ambiance or good the thinking from neighboring country, including China. But it seems China doesn't want to have a border with a country which is very close with the United States. So some people saying whether U.S. can guarantee China that even after unification, U.S. soldiers would not go up to north. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Excellent question, as always, and as to be expected. I guess what I would say is this: is first, I think it's important to note that the United States strongly supports the efforts towards reunification under democratically elected government, a free market economy, and an administration that supports and respects the universal human rights of its people. I think that's the first point. I think the second point is that, in the near term, the United States supports the PAC administration's efforts to engage in a conversation with the North, and really without conditions or caveats at this point. And what we've seen from Seoul is an offer, an extended hand, but what we've seen from Pyongyang is conditions, caveats, excuses as to why not to meet, to at least get the, to use your word, the ambiance a little better. And I think that's an important step. So, look, I think, you know, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals here today, but what I would say is that, you know, the U.S. continues to work and to support efforts on reunification. We support the recent initiatives. I'm going to go over and see the Minister of Unification today, and it's something we are working on very closely and collaboratively with our great allies and partners here on the peninsula.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Kim, please.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much for being here. Your being in Korea is extremely fortunate for both countries at this point and very timely. The Korea and the United States, of course, have very broad alliance and relationship. But considering that, the very, very top level contact between the United States and Korea has been somewhat lacking in the last several decades. We had a very good relationship between Noteo's administration and the Bush administration, which made Korea to emerge in the international scene, including the membership into the United Nations. Today, this is an extremely sensitive spot in the geopolitical sense, and the very close strategic and philosophical dialogue between Korea and the U.S. is very much needed. I mean, at the level of two presidents. And your being here is extremely timely because you are the one ambassador who has the closest relationship and access to the U.S. president, and you also have the personality to conduct very good personal relations with the Korean president. What I like to refer to is the issues like THAAD and the Korean nuclear waste should not have become such an issues on the surface. Two nations should have a very close understanding, and this is the kind of things nobody else's business. Two nations should be solved, and I take this as an example. In all the complex issues in the future, I really count on your role to tying two presidents of the two nations. Thank you.
Well, thanks for a really good set of comments. I think what I would say is, you know, I guess first I would make the point that there, as I said in the speech, it really is a lot of senior level time. Well, let me back up and say this. I always use a measure of how much importance a relationship has is measured by probably one of the most scarce commodities in Washington, which is the time, attention, and energy of senior policymakers. And the fact of the matter is the proof's in the pudding, right? You look at the number of times the president has been here, you look at the reciprocal visits by leaders on the other end, and then you look at the absolute number and level of which senior U.S. officials have come to Korea and, again, participated in reciprocal visits, and it's quite an impressive number, and it keeps the dialogue on the U.S.-Korean strategic issues in the United States system at a very, very high and senior level. So I would say that's sort of point one. Then I'd say the second point is that you have a lot of really good friends of Korea in senior level positions, and I guess the best example of that is Ash Carter, right? Cabinet level official who's been in and around these issues for going on 30 years at a very senior level, and no one I think can dispute Ash's or the secretary's. I'm sorry, we're friendly at times. So no, the secretary's thoughtfulness, the insights, and the energy he brings to this relationship. I think in terms of your broader question is, where is the relationship going, right? And I think that it's a really good point. And my sense is a couple of things. First, the relationship is in really, really good shape today. It's very popular, and I use a couple of tests. First, it's very popular. Second, we are doing increasingly hard and complicated things together, right? And that includes OPCON, that includes 1, 2, 3, that includes the SMA. You can sort of go through the list. Ebola globally is another one that I would put. And then finally, what we're doing these hard things together, and we're doing the hard things together that and we're getting to good policy outcomes, right? And those three things are really, I think, a very good test of where the relationship is and how it's matured into a very vigorous and vibrant partnership. I think, the challenge is for us going forward are in some of these areas where we have good cooperation that I outlined in the speech, but we can be doing a lot more. Cyber, space, environment, energy, those are kind of the new next frontiers for this great relationship and are areas where I would like to put a little more energy into. Thanks.
Okay, pretty soon we have to let the ambassador go to work. So I'll invite just a couple of more questions. Okay, Ambassador He, please.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive lecture this morning. Many people point out that this failure of the U.S. to join the AIIB and also trying to persuade other countries from joining the AIIB and then failed is one of the most embarrassing policy mistakes these days. And the question I have is that it's not just the failure of the AIIB, but on the deeper level, I think the fundamental reason is your failure to deliver on its promise of IMF quota reform, which you promised on the G20. And even for the most recent spring meeting of the IMF IBRD, G20 finance ministers also encouraged again for the U.S. to deliver the IMF quota reform by the end of this year. So do you see any prospect that you can deliver by the end of this year? And if not, how do you want to handle this declining U.S. credibility in the G20 as well as various challenges to the Bretton Woods system, including the AIIB?
Well, it's an excellent question. I guess, there's a lot of different directions you could take this. You could dispute the premise that we're declining in the G20. You could talk a little bit about the AIIB history, but I guess what I would focus in on probably is just more to your point, which is just IMF quota reform. And look, I think the United States, the president has been supportive of this. I think it's really an issue for Congress, and I know that some congressional delegations that have been out here recently, I think, heard the message loud and clear that this is important. It's important to the United States, it's important to our efforts, and it's important to get this right, and it has impacts not just in the IMF, but in terms of the other multilateral development and investment banks around the world, and I think that is a point well taken. So I would probably just stop there. There's other directions you could go, but I'll just kind of stop there on the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Professor Hong, yes.
Thank you. As long as I know, last November, between President Obama and President Xi Jinping in China, both of them, they have agreed open about the future of anti-pollution movement. Then I know that U.S. has promised the pledge to reduce, as you have just mentioned, by 25% in comparison based on 2005 situation in U.S. And China, they also try best to reduce as a peak of 2030s the year. In this occasion, for about both bilateral agreement, both countries, how do you foresee that China would keep on their policy to their policy pledge to U.S. Making their pollution climate ceiling by maximum by 2030s? In this occasion, we are third country just in between, and actually our interest is so high because of such a dust and pollution subject related. Thank you.
Well put, and so I think I guess what I would start with is I think that it's precisely to your point that this is not just a bilateral issue, this is a regional issue, and this is a global issue, is why the president and Secretary Kerry and others like John Podesta, who used to be the counselor to the president, put so much time, effort, and energy on this issue. I mean, this is a huge priority for the administration. So I think that's sort of the first point. To your question, you know, I think working with the Chinese on this, you know, we generally find that the Chinese live up to their agreements. We have to work at it, like on every bilateral agreement. But I think it's just going to take sustained engagement and energy with Chinese friends to keep on track, to keep to these commitments, because I think, to circle back to the first point you make, it's not just the U.S. and Washington that is watching, it's the world that's watching. And it's important to the world, and it's important to the region that we get this right. So I think that there's an additional factor that the weight, the eyes, the moral authority of the rest of the world is also helping move us in the right direction on this deal. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I'm sure we can stay here all day. You and yes. Oh, again, another good friend there.
Ambassador, I feel as if I've been up into space and I've looked down on Korea from outer space already and seen a very happy country here. I just want to, for a second, bring up the elephant in the room that nobody's noticed, which of course is the assault on your person, and again express sympathies which are not just reflected, I'm sure, in everybody here, but also much more widely. And let me set that against the background of the reputation of America in the eyes of the Korean public. I first came to Korea in the 1970s. By the way, I'm the president of the only English language online newspaper in Korea, the Seoul Times. And I wrote an editorial opinion on the assault on your person and described it as a really dreadful breach of what should have been standard security procedures. I'm happy to see that you're up and about and looking cheerful. But one of the reactions, and interesting reactions, was that there was not, in this case, an outpouring of support for the assailant. It was support for yourself. And this went down to young people. We even saw some candlelights, not as many as reminiscent of the horrible demonstrations which brought down a government before, but no upswell of anti-Americanism. In fact, quite the contrary. There was a lot of sympathy for you personally, and I think that, ironically, might have done Korea-America relations a lot better. But when I came back to Korea in the 1980s, having seen what I thought was a very healthy relationship and support in the 70s, I asked one of your predecessors, Ambassador Gregg, what happened to it? Because you had so much goodwill here among in the Korean public. What happened? Because now we see demonstrations of students against US, and the US is described of all sorts of conspiratorial connivances against the Korean people. And he said he was at a loss to understand it as well. So my question is, and I'm sorry to have delayed the question for such a long time, in terms of U.S. Korea relations and the reputation of the U.S. in Korea, do you have a program, an outreach program, particularly to the young, to the students, so they understand much better America and its intentions? Here you've been preaching to the choir, and I'm sure we all agree with you. But what about preaching to the outside the church, those beyond the salt? Thank you again.
No, thanks. No, I think, I think you put your finger on a good issue, which is ensuring that that this relationship is not only politically viable and popular today, but it's something that's sustainable down the road. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, we do have a pretty robust program in terms of our outreach. with young people, and also just, I think, people who are older and, say, in different professions that you don't always see on the diplomatic or speaking circuit. And so those are two key areas that we've identified and are working towards just enhancing our engagement, explaining our position, encouraging people to travel or engage with the United States in an array of issues. And we do a number of different things to that end. And, you know, I guess the most recent example, I was just over at Yonsei yesterday at the Graduate School of International Relations. I've been to other colleges, other universities. We are working on a program where we're hosting some U.S. alumni associations to provide some speakers that we can invite some other people who might be interested in U.S. colleges, for example, to come in. So those are kind of some of the things we're doing. And then finally, just in terms of some of our policy initiatives and where we want to take the alliance, is that, look, there are these pockets or these segments of Korean society that are really passionate about certain issues and are issues that we have engaged on, but probably haven't engaged as much as we could or should have. And those include some of the areas I just mentioned. Environment, there's a very strong environmental and growing environmental movement that often captures young people. Energy, cyber, technology, space, those are some other areas. So we are, in short, to make a long answer, try to summarize it, yes, we do have a program. Yes, it deals a lot with outreach and cultural and people to people, but we're also looking at trying to line up where we spend our policy efforts and trying to ensure that those policy efforts also reach into some segments that we haven't traditionally touched here in Korea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And with this, we have to end this the session this morning with Ambassador Lippert. In concluding the session, I just want to say that your presence here will further strengthen our two countries' relationship and partnership. U.S. used to be the largest trading partner up until recently, but now our trade share with China is almost 25%, but our U.S. share is reduced to somewhere around 10%, with Japan only about 6 to 7%. I think with your president and the ambassador's effort here, I think we two countries, trade and investment and other economic relationship can be further improved. There is room for it, and I'm sure you will contribute much toward this end. Well, with this, we should end, and please join me again thanking Ambassador Lippert taking his time to come to this.